So if I were to just start eating 2,700 calories a day, for me personally, I do rapidly lose weight and I'll see that happening. For someone that has been in this state then for, as an example that you use, 20 or 30 years, if they are at a maintenance, again, making up the numbers, of 3,500 and went to 2,700, what is happening in their body then that is different than mine? Because again, I will lose weight. So they won't lose weight, or it's just way less effective, or what does that look like?
They'll only lose a little bit. So,
Hmm.
and we're overgeneralizing. There will be some individuals who are very responsive, but in general, that individual will cut their calories. Now, if they're not having the help of somebody who understands nutrition, then they're not nutritionally supplementing for essential macro and micronutrients. And at baseline, if they're not, they're probably already nutritionally insufficient and deficient, which drives hunger, right? So your body's structure and function is dependent upon essential macro and micronutrients, not calories. We have reserve calories, we have energy systems. And most people at baseline, unless they are either tied into the regenerative farming community and getting all their food and understanding how they're rotating and all of that, will have measurable nutrient deficiencies and insufficiencies at baseline. It's par for the course now in the United States. So they're already somewhat nutritionally compromised. Now they cut back on their amount of food intake and they don't necessarily fix that variable. They begin their exercise program because they're motivated and ready to do this. But because the body has entrained itself into this particular state, they'll deplete some glycogen at first and they might drop a little bit of weight that way. And for a few weeks, they may notice some benefits. But what ends up happening is about a month out or 6 weeks out, the body, rather than just turning on, let's use our own fat, we've got plenty of it, this is going to be our energy source, the body begins to instead use its more ancestral compensations, which is basically bring metabolic rate down, i.e. de-energize you, and also just all aspects of metabolic rate, body temperature, heart rate, contractility, all of it, the whole system is brought down, and increase hunger drive. That's what it's going to do. Now, part of why it's increasing hunger drive isn't because it needs calories. It has calories. They're stored on it. It's just not using them. But it needs nutrients. Right? It actually needs essential amino acids and essential fatty acids and phospholipids and vitamins and minerals. And so that's why it's so critical for people when they're embarking on a lower calorie diet for weight loss and they're eating American food, that at least for that period of time, you are doing some type of robust, broad-based essential nutritional supplementation. But so if you can set the body up where it's not lacking for the nutrient piece, hunger signaling gets dropped, cell systems can continue to work, and you can end up really making progress. But that's just one variable that needs to be attended to. But for most of these individuals, what ends up happening, of course, is 6 weeks out, they stop going to their workouts because they think they're lazy, and they start overeating and cheating because they don't think they have any self-control, when that's really just being driven by their central nervous system. It's we've got to eat, we've got to get back to where we were. This is not a good situation. So that's what's happening, and not counting the effects of, if they're 50 and they've been overweight, they probably have low gonadal and adrenal hormones. And there's all these other aspects of signaling in the system that's not being
Sure.
fixed. And if they have a massive toxicant burden stored in their visceral fat, the body, and their glutathione depleted and phase 2 detox isn't working well, the body is not going to begin to open up those fat cells, because the toxins come out with the fat and it can't process them. It can't handle it. So it's, no, we're going to hold on to this. So essentially it'll shut people down. They'll be wiped out, brain foggy, tired, cold, thin hair, dry
Jeez.
skin. And yeah, it's not good. But in their mind, I just don't have what it takes to do this. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
so as for me, sit around on 185 to 190 right now at 3,500 calories. I dropped to 2,700. I probably am going to be a little moody for a couple of weeks. My body will drop to maybe 170. I'll be able to sit there, and then otherwise I'll regulate, because I've had this happen before, right? Otherwise I'll regulate and feel fine. And these poor people are going through a completely different experience almost, especially psychologically, it sounds. Yeah, I appreciate this for no other reason other than just increasing my empathy for people with different problems. I've
yeah.
always been the opposite. If anything, it's better now, but I'd be the person that had trouble gaining weight rather than the opposite. Kim, I do see your question, by the way. We're going to get to it very soon. You must be a regular listener, because she asked right at the 31-minute mark. So if you guys have any questions for our guest today, please throw them in. I have one more that I'd like to prioritize, if you guys don't mind. And then we'll go to the audience here. One other thing I wanted to go back to, I don't even know if you were mentioning it for this reason, but you did mention the effects on dopamine and all this stuff. So I read a book called Willpower back when I was maybe 2021, and it
Great
talked
book.
about, how carbohydrates, sugars, all these different blood sugar levels can affect our willpower, our motivation, all this kind of stuff. They actually even cited, I forget the exact percentage, it was somewhere in the 80 to 90 range, but it said they could predict violent offenders in prison who would go on to be repeat offenders with 80 something percent accuracy based solely on their blood sugar levels while they were in incarceration, which is nuts to me.
Yeah.
So, another thing I was thinking about, because we're specifically talking right now, at least, about people with diabetes or a lot of extra mass on their bodies. I won't mention, I don't even want to reference this person because they're close enough to me. There is someone that I've known that's been a type 2 diabetic for a very long time. And it's from the outside, it feels like I'm watching someone that has these very small bursts of, I'm ready to change, I'm ready to do it. And then it is almost like you're watching someone who can't. And this is coming from someone who's all about raw self motivation, self responsibility, build your own path, all that kind of stuff. But I see them and I'm like, it is almost like you really can't do this and you just do not get the rewards anymore or the basic hormones and neurochemistry necessary to motivate yourself to do something new. Is that a major problem in these people who have been type 2 diabetic for a while or on standard American diets for 20, 30, 40 years and having excess weight?
Yeah, consistent exposure to elevated blood glucose in the everywhere in the body, but especially the brain, has a lot of damaging cellular effects and circulatory effects, and it ultimately does shift neurochemistry in many ways. It is very hard for them. Now, back to our prior example, I want to be clear: not everybody at 50 with 40 pounds would go through that experience. I said
Sure.
there are some people that if they had the right programming and nutrients and protein were optimized and when stress and sleep, if you program it rightly, that person can make progress. I don't want to make it sound like nobody can make progress. It's whatsoever. But yeah, and so that increase of the dopamine, increased dopamine signal associated with GLP-1s has been demonstrated to reduce cravings and food dependencies, sugar, but also potentially alcohol, nicotine, and other harmful substances. So there are trials right now looking at these as addiction drugs. And so, that can be really helpful for the person in that state. Not to mention that if you're insulin resistant with elevated blood glucose, i.e. diabetes, that's another strong signal in the body that's actually limiting your ability to access stored energy and lose weight effectively. So if you can simultaneously help on the neurochemical level and give them leverage there, and then also reduce just functionally how much a person can eat at any given sitting, improve satiety, and then at the same time begin to improve pancreatic function, reduce tissue level insulin resistance, also all the anti-inflammatory effects throughout the body of these particular peptides, you're going to help a person a lot to be able to get forward momentum. And that can be the kind of thing where you transition them for 2 or 3 months and then you can pull them off. Because
Okay.
once the body gets into, once you've completed the adaptations, and now the body is successfully shifting biochemistry, shifting physiology, accessing stored energy, fatty acid oxidation in the mitochondria is taking place. A lot of these people, if you do a full metabolomic study or a different way of studying it, you will see that the people with obesity, a lot of them, their fatty acid oxidation and the mitochondrial level is blocked. It's like minimally efficient. So what you're asking them to do is switch to primary fatty acid oxidation, and the biochemistry is not even functional. And so you've got to give some support in that area so that they can use those fats. But once you get those adaptations done and the mitochondria are oxidizing nutrients and you're managing mitochondrial exhaust and insulin signal is improved and blood glycemic variability is improved and the body gets into a groove of accessing its stored energy, its i.e. hydrocarbons and that it's got on its body, and you keep nutrients and protein optimized and you keep metabolic rate up through physical activity, then it just goes incredible for a
Okay.
long time. People get into a groove and they feel great and their body's responding and they're not starving and they can go a long way down the road and lose a lot of weight without losing any lean mass. In fact, most of the time what we see in our clinic is people adding substantial amounts of lean mass while they're losing the fat mass.